Hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today we're taking a look at Vampire Hunters, another bullet heaven game. Not to be confused with the game called Bullet Heaven, which is just another bullet hell shmup. In the wake of Vampire Survivors. It's even named similar to it, though to be fair, it's not another random word survivor, but instead flips it around and uses the first half of the name, Vampire, and puts the emphasis on what you're about to do in this game. You don't try to survive an endless stream of enemies. I mean, you do, but that's not your end goal. You're a vampire hunter, goddammit. So that means you want to eradicate all the monsters standing in your way and defeat their sinister masters. And while many of the bullet heavens that released recently have just lazily copied pretty much everything from Vampire Survivors, this game puts another twist into it. In that it is a demon-slaying first-person shooter with a hideously low FOV. What is this shit? Let's do something about it. Just crank it up. Better. Oh yeah, that Doom music always gets the blood flowing. Now what about this game's soundtrack? It's a bit generic and not all that pumping. Now that sounds more like it. Yeah, just crank the volume up. Oh yeah. So yeah, the soundtrack is a bit hit and miss. Nothing stands out as too bad, but sometimes it's just a bit weak. Though some of the tracks sound a lot like something you'd hear in Castlevania, which is rather fitting, so I'm okay with it. The core gameplay loop has you running down endless hallways with an increasing number of enemies mindlessly running towards you, for the most part, with zero positioning involved. In that regard, it has more in common with Serious Sam than with Doom. Just instead of holding S or back and left mouse, you're holding W or forward and left mouse. You continuously push on and only occasionally walk backwards and shoot when an enemy is a bit more spongy. So this game is Vampire Survivors meets Serious Sam, kinda. Vampire Survivors had an incredible idea. A fresh new take on the horde shooter or hack and slay or however you want to call it. It's kind of a reverse bullet hell in where you clutter the screen with a million projectiles. It's by no means easy, maybe compared to actual bullet hell games, but aside from them, the game can provide some good challenge because when the game gets going, it really gets going with tons of hard-hitting enemies closing in on you. But the sheer number of weapons you are able to collect and simultaneously use make you as much of a threat as the enemy hordes are. Instead of collecting upgrades to power up your weapons, you collect XP from fallen enemies. And whenever you level up, you select a reward from a list of randomized options. Like a new weapon or an upgrade for an already equipped weapon or a character upgrade like increased health and stuff. You also collect gold during a run, with which you can buy permanent upgrades for your character and weapons from the title screen, and by that get more and more powerful the longer you play. Vampire Hunters took the core principle and gave it its own spin. The first-person perspective made the game more frantic and visceral, but also meant that enemies couldn't just spawn in from any direction at any given moment, or it would just be a frustratingly disorienting mess. So levels aren't infinitely sprawling in every direction with a bit of obstacle dodging involved. Instead, they are infinite hallways in which enemies all attack from only one direction. But a slowly moving wall blocks your way back, so you need to put some good distance between you and it before the more powerful enemies appear, or you get mercilessly pushed towards them. Or even hurt, depending on the level you're in. And since this is a shooter, instead of magic effects floating around you, you collect actual weapons. Pistols, rifles, crossbows and all that good stuff. And each weapon gets equipped in your main or offhand, and by that fills in the edges of your screen more and more. And it just looks incredible. This is the outrageous bullshit I want from iterations on a popular idea. Either refine it to a shine, or make it as ridiculous as possible. Now, the game doesn't feature a huge, extensive campaign. It only has a handful of levels that each take about 10 minutes to beat. If you manage to beat them, that is. The game is designed around surviving for long enough in any given level until you collected enough gold to buy more upgrades for your character. And by that, being strong enough to beat the level and move on to the next. And you get gold as a random drop from defeated enemies and as a reward for completing challenges. You spend your gold on things like permanent damage, health or reload speed upgrades and the like. And you can also buy and unlock new starting loadouts that come with passive abilities to add slightly so much strategy to any given run. One starting setup might give you a rather weak weapon like the Holy Water, but increases the chance for gold drops massively. So you want that one if you ever need to grind for money, which you certainly will. Another loadout might increase the damage of every weapon you collect during the run, which sounds pretty awesome, but if RNGesus doesn't hand you enough quick firing weapons or reload speed upgrades during the run, its helpfulness drastically decreases. Whereas a loadout that increases the amount of XP drops, or abilities that affect this, stays useful no matter what weapons you're wielding and what enemies approach you. That being said, the game tends to be quite mindless, with you only moving in one direction and enemies homing in on you. The decisions you make will affect the enemy encounters, and conversely, you will gravitate towards certain upgrades depending on the level you're in. But don't expect that much from it. Your enjoyment and comfort with certain weapons will affect your decisions way more than the enemy roster or level layout. And after you've collected a few weapons in a run, it can be rather awkward to play, what with every weapon equipped and fired simultaneously. And manually reloading does indeed reload all your weapons at once. There are automatic and semi-automatic weapons and weapons with charge up time, or some that get more powerful the longer you hold down the fire button, and certain upgrades can grant these effects to other weapons. So yeah, have fun with automatic multi-projectile grenade launchers. But you have to keep all that in mind and ever so slightly adjust your playstyle to accommodate for your loadout. And in that regard, it might even have more depth than Vampire Survivors, where every weapon shoots automatically after a cooldown period. Which may lead, at times, to you not wanting to equip maybe a powerful weapon because it just doesn't complement your loadout in this run. But the right weapon loadout only helps in part with the approaching enemy hordes. And this leads to maybe my biggest critique with this game. You see, it can get a bit grindy. Levels aren't too long and not all that complicated, but enemies' health pools increase massively with each level. So it is pretty much a requirement to buy some damage upgrades and the like, and for that you must pick up a lot of gold, and I mean a ton of gold. So your best bet is to buy the gold drop upgrades, jump into the levels you've already beaten and are strong enough to deal with the monsters, and go grind for even more gold. There should have been a better way. The game is really fun, but this just feels like a huge waste of time. I mean, you can try to go for some of the achievements to get some cash rewards, but some of them fucking don't even work. I went for the 5000 gold achievement, where you aren't allowed to move, jump or use your little dash ability, and played right to the boss of the first level, and then the moving wall just stopped and so I was stuck. Well, since the achievement description says walking and not running, I tried to run through the level, which also didn't help. Maybe it just doesn't work in the first level, but then again, the second level's boss chases you and has you running backwards, so I don't think you can complete the achievement there. And the third level has you jump over pits. And the moving wall is furnished with spikes that hurt you, so no thank you. Maybe it's just bugged, or maybe you have to attempt it in a later level. I also haven't gotten the Highlander achievement, where you need to beat a level with only a single weapon, which I did. Twice. The second time even without upgrading once, because I thought that might have been the reason why I haven't gotten it the first time around. But yeah, it didn't work. But at least it gave me a reason to play around with the options. Normally you'd level up immediately after collecting enough XP and had to select a weapon or upgrade. But you can check manual leveling in the options menu to save up your XP and only level up when you're ready. You still have to redeem all your level ups though, so I don't really see a reason to do so. I guess it interrupts your run less, but that was nothing to really bother me. There are a few other options to modify your experience though. You can activate lazy shooting for both your main weapons and shoulder-mounted secondary weapons. This results in your secondary weapons to fire as soon as an enemy is in range, and your primary weapons to automatically fire whenever you aim at an enemy. You can turn on full auto fire to have every weapon be an automatic weapon even without upgrades, and auto fire after reloading to have your weapons starting to fire after a reload as long as the fire button is held down, otherwise you'd need to press it again. And then there is a ludicrously powerful auto aim slider. You might as well just put a weight on your W key and let the game play itself if you crank up the auto aim and activate lazy firing. Though it is a good way to grind for gold. Vampire Survivors was ironically a bit less monotonous when it came to farming gold. While I'd call the game itself more repetitive or monotonous because of its more slow nature where you'd wander around and avoid enemies a lot more, it was a lot more bearable. In Vampire Hunters, the gold prices of some of the upgrades are rather high for only a slight benefit, and you can only replay the same linear levels so often before it becomes a bit boring. The randomization of level up rewards helps, and you can unlock more rewards by completing challenges, but it doesn't take long for you to see every weapon, every upgrade, and memorize every enemy placement within any given level. Maybe the gold rewards could be greater, maybe upgrades could be cheaper, or maybe the upgrades could have been for the weapons themselves. It would give them a greater purpose and wouldn't feel like just keeping up with the stronger enemies. And upgrading to keep up with them you must. It's not that movesets get that much more complicated, or that you have to pick your targets more strategically, or that you have to aim your shots better. I mean, it certainly helps to always nail the headshots and prioritize targets appropriately, but when your weapons just don't do enough damage at the start of a level, then there's nothing you can do aside from buying more power. Maybe enemies, at least in the beginning of a level, should always be weak enough to quickly be dealt with, or maybe the game shouldn't rely so much on the damage upgrades. Different weapons are mostly side grades and come with benefits and drawbacks, and the different starting loadouts do have some interesting bonuses. The game should have doubled down on this system instead of beefing up enemies with every level. Then you wouldn't need to farm gold in between levels. Or maybe I'm just too stupid to play the game. I wouldn't put it past me, to be honest. The game's concept is great. More so than from Vampire Survivors, it takes the upgrade system from classic shoot 'em ups, multiplies it by 11 with the sheer amount of combinations you can get, and looks just amazing in the process. While enemies generally just want to give you a big hug, with some of them throwing little friendliness balls at you, there is a good variety when it comes to your adversaries. The basic ones simply run up to you, with some of them having less and some more HP. Some of them staying on the ground and can be hit with pretty much all of your attacks, while others float or fly and so require a bit more finesse, since some of your weapons only attack the ground or are affected by bullet drop. But then there are enemies that shoot multiple projectiles or multiply when you shoot them, or accelerate the longer they are active, or they jam your weapons. The developers put some good thought into this game, and if they continue to work on it, fine-tune it and add to it, I can see a lot of players having a blast with it for quite a while. I sadly couldn't find anything about the pricing for this game, so I can't really say if it's worth the asking price, but what I can say is that the game is certainly worth playing. Not the deepest of experiences, not the most innovative or polished one, but a fun concept executed competently with some superficial difficulty spikes. If you can put up with a bit of grinding and can enjoy this style over substance, though not lacking in substance, approach to a hallway shooter, then go for it. The game's really fun and the chaos with all the weapon pickups really adds to it. But no matter what you do, have a great day. That's it from Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.